What?
I don't want to lose you. Can you hear me? Way back there? Good. And you can see the screen. Feel free to come all the way up here if you want, because it gets more exciting up toward the front. Also, we ran out of coffee just before this event started, which is kind of a conference catastrophe. You have my permission to go get more coffee. I don't want you to be uncaffeinated for this. This is my first slide, and it's a hero shot of extreme skier Chris Davenport at one of our resorts. The only reason it's my first slide is that I'm presenting to you, I come from the ski industry, and my first slide is actually that. And after I met Murray Guy, I realized, well, actually, he probably thinks this is sexier than that. He's such a geek on energy and climate. And I use that in a positive way. From talking to you all seem to me technical fanatics about mechanical engineering and architecture and building buildings properly. So, really, and this is the kind of group I love to talk to. And that's why, usually I have to convince people that this slide is less sexy than that, but I think you're already there. Now that doesn't speak well to your social skills, the potential that you will one day get married and have children, or your ability to interact with large groups of people. But that's not why we're here. So, what's going on in this picture? And you look at it, you can kind of figure out what's happening. This is really why we're here. This is getting something done on the ground, actually accomplishing something. And what it is a walk-in cooler in a restaurant at a place like this, a resort, a winter resort. This is an all-season resort, but a winter resort. And one of the building engineers was hanging out in this room one day in the summer, and he looked and he saw there was a power tool called a Sawzall, which you're all familiar with. It's a great tools, weapon. You could go up to this wall and cut a hole in it. And he wanted to use it, of course, and we all do. And he also said, that wall, this is an exterior wall. Why don't I use the Sawzall to cut a hole in it, put in this vent system that's tied to the thermostat and the compressor, so that when it's cold enough out, the thermostat will kick off, we'll open this vent with a small fan and bring in cold air from the outside. It's free cooling. And we're a winter resort, we're only open in the winter, so it's free cooling all the time. What a great idea. This is a metaphor for what we need to do as a society. We need to replace a scarce resource, energy, with an even more scarce resource, intelligence. And if I just stop the story here and later you were at the bar and you're talking, hey, that was cool, what happened? They put the vent in the bathroom or in the cooler. But that's not the point of the story. The point is, because this is a one-off, it doesn't matter that we made this building marginally more energy efficient. And I'm going to tell you why. You know why. We have a huge problem of scale in solving climate and dealing with energy. What's cool about this is that this now becomes design guidance for every cold weather restaurant. So what you do to your architect is you say, hey, put the cooler on an exterior wall. It adds no cost. Do that and put this in initially. So now every cold weather restaurant is getting free cooling. And it's our obligation as a ski resort to share this information. And so we did another restaurant. We replaced one, we built it efficiently, and we put the cooler on an exterior wall. And there's actually a system now, a commercial system called Free Air, that does this. So the point is, you can't stop with your green building. You have to figure out how to solve the problem at scale and how to make it a scale solution. And the reason that you need to do that is this. This is January of 2010, the hottest year in recorded history. Look at the scale. That's a 7, and it's 7C. This is the darker the color, the greater the temperature anomaly over a 1950 to 1980 baseline. So, wait, you're telling me that where you all hang out is 7 degrees C hotter than normal? And at one point, it was I think it was as high as 9 degrees C. I'm going to show you another slide from December. It was outrageous. Now, when you hear this, looking around, I left Aspen, it was blue sky and 45 degrees, not Celsius, Fahrenheit. And I arrived here into a nuclear blizzard and sub-zero temperatures. And so the response from the right, certainly in the US, is, well, this is all good, right? Because it's horrible up here. This is. I don't mean here. I think this is one of the most beautiful places I've visited. But these areas need a little heat, and it'll be great if we can warm up Moscow. It'll be great if we can warm up Greenland. And you are literally hearing that from elected officials in the world and in the U.S. It speaks to a complete lack of understanding of any systemic approach to science or how the Earth works. It's something that all of you would reject, because if you've been to these areas, you know that what we have up there is frozen bog, and it's methane bog, and it's frozen solid. And if for some reason we started to disproportionately warm the northern latitudes as we are, and you can, if you look at the science, you see warming is happening disproportionately at the poles. Well, you start to melt these bogs and release methane, and when you burp out a big chunk of methane, it's 23 times more potent than CO2 as greenhouse gas. You create warming. More warming releases more methane, and you're in what is called a positive feedback loop, or an arms race. And when politicians talk about climate, they don't understand it typically. They say, it's gonna be 2 degrees warmer, so what? What keeps the scientific community up at night is not that it's going to be a couple degrees warmer. What keeps them up is the threat of these positive feedback loops. In this case, look at Greenland. By the way, I do want to point out that the one area of the world that could help change this problem isn't actually warm. What a catastrophic problem that Washington, D.C. actually hasn't been that warm relative to other parts of the world. So, the positive feedback loop in Greenland would be that as soon as you start melting that ice sheet, you can't stop it. And that keeps scientists awake at night. So, at the same time, you now have the International Energy Agency last week saying that if we don't change something, we're going to see 11 degrees F of warming. Well, that's catastrophic to civilization. That means more than 80 feet of sea level rise. And again, from the ski industry perspective, everyone has always said, oh, the snow's going to go away. Well, that's not our problem. Look at what happened this year all over the world, but in the northeast of the U.S. and elsewhere, where huge floods, big storms, big droughts are causing chaos that create economic catastrophe. So people will stop worrying about skiing or other things. We'll be in a survival society if we don't solve climate change. So this is why we're here. And the challenge that I talk about is when you go to solve the problem, you find obstacles that nobody taught you about when you were in sustainability school. So this is one example. No one told you, I guarantee that none of you have ever heard that your green project is going to fail because it's too good. Here's an example. These are solar thermal hot water system tubes at a hotel in Aspen, and a similar project was proposed at a property in California. And California has all these great rebates. Hotels have a huge domestic hot water load, and so the engineer proposed this project to the CFO. He said, here's what it's going to do. It's going to work, and here's the return on investment, 65% return on investment. What do you think the CFO said? The CFO rejected the project, and here's the reason. It was too good to be true. No kidding. So, did anyone, you never thought that was coming. Well, it turns out the CFO was smart. Actually, the return wasn't 65%, it was about 50%. But the point is, you can be so good that you can fail. And you can also be so bad that you can succeed. I was working on a project, a base